You're clearly in New York, aren't you, Peter?
How'd you guess?
Yes, I know the sound of that city. Could be 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. That's what it sounds like.
You are right.
Yeah. Okay, so we were talking about Bernie Sanders, and you were starting to tell the story about this $80 or $85 million campaign that was on television and ad buying, the last campaign. You don't know who was doing the buying for that, but that's 15% of that money went to that person. It used to be his wife. It still could be his wife, I would imagine.
Well, yes, the home, so this, of course, went through Old Town Media, which was just set up in a home in suburban Virginia, was linked to two former aides that were friends of Jane's that were involved in the media buys before. Now, Jane Sanders was actually asked by a Vermont reporter, a progressive, about this during the 2016 campaign. What did she know about Old Town Media? Was she connected to Old Town Media? Her answer, Glenn, was she hung up the phone. So, we don't know, but what we do know is there's been this pattern with the Sanders family in the past. Again, when Bernie Sanders was running for Congress, Jane Sanders and her kids actually set up a company called Sanders Media, through which they became a contractor for his campaign. So the pattern certainly fits. And the final piece to this media buying campaign is after that 2016 loss, what Bernie did was he set up this 501c4 political action group to sort of carry on the revolution. And when it was announced that basically that entity was going to engage in massive media buying, half a dozen of the staffers of that group quit in protest because they said, this is not what we signed up for. We thought this was going to be a grassroots campaign, and all this is going to do is make media buyers wealthy. So this is a huge problem, and because the disclosure laws do not require you to disclose who's actually getting the commissions for the media buys, we just simply don't know, but we have our suspicions.
Can you tell the Burlington College story quickly, or is it?
Yeah, Burlington College. Jane Sanders is appointed president of the college. The college board says the reason they picked her essentially was because Bernie was a senator and they thought he could help. She wants to expand the college. They get help from some very wealthy Vermont families to help that expansion take place. This is an unknown side of Bernie Sanders. He does not dislike rich people. He only dislikes certain rich people. Those that agree with him and support his activities, he's very supportive of. But basically what happens is Burlington College can't make the payments to pay for this loan that they've taken out to expand. Part of the problem is that Jane Sanders, as president of the college, funnels about $500,000 of the college's money to her daughter's woodworking school, which is unaccredited. It's unclear whether the college committee or leadership even approved that transaction, but the college basically collapsed, and there's been a lot of scandal around it because the claims are that Jane Sanders made a lot of claims about money that was promised to the college to make this happen. When investigators, including the FBI, went and met with those individuals, they said, no, I never made that pledge. So there have been allegations that there were fraud on these applications to get the bank loans to begin with.
What do you think his supporters do if they would ever, pick up your book and read this? Do you think, I think these young kids, they believe it, and they believe he's just an old fart that has been saying these things, and he believes it. At least he's honest. And when you look at the corruption, it's the way the Soviet Union works, or used to work, where if you're part of the political elite, you get a special lane on the highway. What do you think his deep supporters would think of what you outline in the book?
Well, I think they would be shocked if they looked at it. What I would say to them, even if you don't want to buy the book, what I would encourage Bernie Sanders supporters to do is look at his rhetoric where he says he's a socialist, he does not like corporate America, he believes corporations are evil, and then actually look at his investment portfolio. His investment portfolio is in blue chip Fortune 500 stock. By the way, this is very interesting, Glenn. A lot of people know there's this phenomenon of sort of socially responsible investment funds, and Bernie doesn't invest in those. Bernie invests in Fortune 500 company stock. When Jane ran Burlington College, they had a small endowment. They had stock in tobacco companies. They had stock in pharmaceutical companies, chemical companies. There is a yawning gap between how Bernie Sanders thinks we should live our lives and the way that he and his wife actually live their life.
Elizabeth Warren, in your book, Profiles of Corruption. Take her on. She's chapter 5.
Yes. So Elizabeth Warren, it's kind of a three-layer cake of corruption. It involves her, it involves her daughter, and it involves her son-in-law. Beginning with her very quickly, a lot of people don't realize in the mid-1990s, Elizabeth Warren was hired by Congress and paid by taxpayers to rewrite a portion of corporate bankruptcy law. She did that for 3 years. What did she do after she rewrote that law? And she says in legal documents she actually wrote the law. She hired herself out to major corporations to help them use the law to their advantage.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, this is the consummate insider Washington deal, right? We hear about this all the time. And in fact, and I would agree with her on this, Elizabeth Warren has condemned other people who have done it. She did that very thing. She got huge paydays from companies like Dow Chemical, Armstrong Worldwide, companies that were having problems with, litigation involving asbestos and breast implants, made millions of dollars doing that. It's a classic self-enrichment scheme. So that's the first thing that I think is troubling. The chapter on Elizabeth Warren's, probably 40 pages long. There's a lot of material there. I'm just skimming over it. If you go to the second part in that would be looking at her daughter, Amelia Tyagi. They're very, very close. And Amelia had helped start a company called BTG in 2007. And BTG was looking for capital and was looking for advisors to help this business really go. Well, Elizabeth Warren, if you remember, in 2008, is selected by Congress by Harry Reid to be the chairman of the Oversight Committee for TARP. TARP was the committee that was sending out huge sums of money bailing out Wall Street firms. And Elizabeth Warren becomes the chairman of that Oversight Committee. When she meets with Harry Reid, her daughter Amelia actually comes with her to the meeting. Well, here's what's interesting. What happens over the next...
Wait.
Yeah.
Was it Bring Your Daughter to Work Day?
I'll have to check that.
Okay, because that could explain all of this. All right, go ahead.
Here's what's interesting. In the 6 to 8 months following Elizabeth Warren's appointment to the TARP Oversight Committee, two things happen. TARP bails out major Wall Street investment firms. During the same period, her daughter's new company gets new investors and new advisors from the same firms that are being bailed out by TARP. What you find is that when Elizabeth Warren joins the United States Senate, this company, BTG, actually starts taking on government clients. Entities like the Corporation for Public Broadcasting that Elizabeth Warren is pushing legislation for greater government funding. So that's the second layer of the cake. The final one, which I think is probably the most troubling, involves her son-in-law, Sushil Tyagi, a very, very bright guy, came over from India, met Elizabeth Warren's daughter at Wharton Business School at the University of Pennsylvania. He has a lot of business activities. He's very entrepreneurial, but he has one entity called Tricolor Films that he started. He's taken down the website, but on the website, which we were able to recover, it talks about their business model is making films that are funded and in partnership with foreign governments, which is certainly a unique business model. Well, here's the stunning part. He does one film that is financed by the Iranian government. And that's not speculation. That is not. We actually have the film credits. We actually have the documents. The son-in-law is the sole producer on this film. And the financiers are these Iranian government agencies. These Iranian government agencies, by the way, also fund and participate in things like Al-Quds Day, which is a very anti-Semitic celebration in Iran.
It's the mourning of the loss of Jerusalem and the vow to get it back by blood.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Well, the same government entities that financed his film also are very active in Al-Quds Day. And in the film credits, one of the entities that they give credit and thanks to is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Air Force. I don't know what their participation was in the film, but this to me speaks of a willingness to work with some really, really, really nasty people around the world. And that's something that I think, again, we need to have more information on. Are there other governments? He talks about working with foreign governments. Did he work with other governments on films? That's, I think, a legitimate question that people should ask.
When I was looking into Ukraine, I see that a lot of people are doing what the Bidens were doing over in Ukraine to one degree or another. Nothing like the Bidens, but it's rampant. Do you ever see anybody ever trying to clean this up? Are there people that are decent enough in Congress and in the administration or in the Senate that will actually take this on?
I think there are some that want to. I think the problem is right now, as you correctly point out, is this is a bipartisan problem. And whenever there's an opportunity for both political sides for people to make money, you're going to have a hard time getting a consensus because you have very good people that are honest and want to have this go away, and they are actually in both political parties. But you also have more powerful people generally in both political parties that either wink and nod or actually participate in this kind of corruption. The only thing that they understand, Glenn, is exposure and embarrassment and shame.
There is
that's the only thing that leads them. I wrote a book back in 2011 on insider trading by members of Congress on the stock market. I came on your show. We talked about it. It was on 60 Minutes. Congress did not want to deal with it. They were basically forced to, 3 months later, pass a bill, which they've now kind of gutted, but they were forced to at least pass a bill making it illegal for members of Congress to engage in insider trading. So they will act.
But those are different days. I mean, look at what's happening with this impeachment. There's no amount of shame. There's no one holding anyone accountable anymore.
Right. I agree with you completely, and it's a very sad day. We have a binary situation, and people do not want to call out somebody on their own side because they think somehow it's going to lead to the collapse of their side. And what I just tell people is, nobody is irreplaceable. If you are a Democrat and you hate Donald Trump, Joe Biden is not your savior. There are other people that can perform that duty. I would say the same thing to Republicans that are, officials that are corrupt. There are other people, good people, that can take their place. So I just urge everybody, never fall into the trap of saying, I'm going to accept anything that this individual does because we're afraid of losing them, because there are other people that can step up and take those roles.
Peter Schweizer, he is the author of the book Profiles in Corruption. I literally have 30 seconds. Any chance do you believe that Hunter Biden will have to testify?
I think there's a pretty small chance. I think he should, but I just think that they're going to make a pact, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Peter Schweizer, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again. Profiles in Corruption. It is really well worth any price that you're paying for it. What is it, $25 in hardcover, $29 in hardcover, 100 pages of footnotes, and it's jaw-dropping. Profiles